Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to the On Texas Football Saturday morning conversation. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel. Yes, usually this is Bobby Burton, but Bobby's got a lot of stuff going on. So just for this week, I'm going to sit in for Bobby. So I'm glad my man CJ could join me. I appreciate that. Today we're going to discuss Sark is doing the talking tours. He's doing the kind of the interview circuit in the offseason. He's done a couple of interviews, one kind of locally there in Austin with Kirk Bowles. My man said Golden on their Second Thought podcast. So I want to get into some of his comments that he made on that interview. And also he sat down with Josh Pate and did an interview with him. And I want to get into some of the things he said. That was a lot more lengthy interview. So I want to get into some of his comments. I think they'll shed a lot of light and insight about this 2024 Texas football team. All right, let's start. Let's get right into it. The first thing I want to bring up is a comment that Sark was asked about when he was on the On Second Thought podcast with Kirk Bowles and with Seth Golden. He was asked about what Quinn has improved on most. And I thought his answer was actually pretty expansive. He went into a lot of things, but this is what he brought up. He said, with Quinn, always room for improvement, but he said the thing that he's improved on the most is his pocket presence. He said trust in the timing of the drop. He talked about the subtle movements in the pocket. He said quarterbacks have to stand tall and have a level of comfort in the pocket of the football. And here's what he said that was key. There's always room for improvement. He said, we're really on Quinn about now. We're getting to the second and leads. Let's be so comfortable that we're getting to the third and fourth reads and times the fifth. Finding that rhythm and the ball getting out of his hands. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. And there is Sark literally laying it out there plain and clear. And I think he's saying that because I think that's what the scouts want to see. Scouts want to see him get deeper in those progressions too. What are your thoughts? There's Sark saying it right now. Is that the next basically for Quinn? Let's be so comfortable that we're getting to the third, fourth, and even fifth reads in some of those drops.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the absolute next step in his game. We've seen him be accurate down the field. We've seen him improve his accuracy on bombs way down the field. But anything within 20 yards right now, you expect that thing to be completed and put in position where only his receiver can make a play on the ball. That's what we know about Quinn Ewers. Now, the big question becomes when that first read isn't there, do you have a second? And if that second read isn't there, what we saw last year is he took a lot of self-sacks. He took himself out of a lot of plays at times where I think, at least after his first season at Texas, it was first read to sack. Now it's first read to second read to maybe I'll run, maybe I'll look around, maybe I'll check down, but it's not as consistent as you would like it to be. This year, I think, especially after the strong spring that he had, that's going to be the expectation is he goes all the way through his progressions and then diagnoses where he needs to go with the ball if nothing's available. Is it the running back in the flats for a check down? Mm-hmm. Is it the tight end in the flats for a check down? Is it a hot route somewhere along the lines if there's pressure? Or do I take off and run? We didn't see him run very much his first year at Texas. Last year, we saw him use his legs a little bit. Will we continue to see more of that? I believe so. He's probably still not going to be a true dual threat guy, but at that point, we've certainly seen the improvement in his running ability and a more willingness to take off and run. I didn't think at any point his first year at Texas we'd see 2 35-yard rushing touchdowns from Quinn Ewers in conference play. I just didn't think that was going to be ever a part of his game. We saw that a year ago. Will we see that again next year? Probably not, but I do think we'll see more 10-yard runs, more 15-yard runs with the slide at the end to protect himself. I don't think he'll be trying to lower the shoulder against, Houston linebackers anymore, but that's part of the game that we'll continue to see as a result of the first and the second read not necessarily being there and him finding ways to get yards, put points on the board, and move that offense down the field.
Yes, Sark is great at scheming guys open. He does a really good job of that. So as a result, a lot of Quinn's progressions are first read wide window throws, as I like to call them. Even the RPO game, essentially, that's quick game. The ball's getting out very quickly. And even Sark has said he'd like to tag his RPOs with more than one route because he said otherwise the quarterback will think it's a pass play and they'll just drop back and throw it. So That's so Sark. He's a guy that wants to give his quarterbacks, he wants to simplify for him. And I don't think sometimes it's kind of working against Quinn now in the narrative that he's a one-read quarterback. He's a single-read quarterback. And truth is now Sark, I think, is stating that publicly because he wants people to know, no. He's getting deeper into progressions. Now we're going to get him as deep as he can go into these progressions. And to get into your self-sack point there, in 2022, Quinn Ewers, basically, if you go look to pressure to sack percentage, it was 13.9%, which is pretty good. In 2023, that number rose to over 25%. So the scouts are trying to figure out which Quinn is it. And to your point, Quinn was running a lot last season. I think the reason he was running is because they watched the film and Quinn started literally the defenses would turn their back on him and they would give him just 15 yards of just green grass in front of him. He was talking,
right.
You know what, man, I got to take that. That's just easy money. I don't know if he'll get that as much this season because, like you said, he's showing off his functional mobility. But he's got to show the scouts not only to get deeper into his progression, but Sark talked about the pocket presence. I call it pocket science of being able to move in the pocket, buy yourself time, feel the pressure, not see it, which I think Quinn does a lot of. Feel it, not see it, kind of how Penix does, and then be able to keep your eyes downfield and get deep into the progression. So I thought that was interesting that Sark brought that up in that interview on Second Thought with Kirk Bowles and with my man Seth Godin. Getting to the Josh Pate interview, he brought up a couple of things I want to talk about here and get your comments on, CJ. The first comment that he made that intrigued me was when he was answering a question about potential injuries and depth and how do you build your roster and construct your roster to combat the injury bug, which we know is inevitable in football. It's going to hit you at one position. You just don't know where. And as a coach, how do you construct your roster to have contingency plans to deal with the injuries, which you know are coming. You just don't know where they're coming and you don't know when they're going to hit. And I thought it was interesting. Here's what Sark had to say when he was asked about, he said, honestly, making sure that you're versatile enough to withstand injuries is important. He said recruiting players who can play multiple positions and whether your scheme is versatile enough schematically to utilize that personnel available to you. And he also said with versatility, what he talking about the scheme with the players late in the season, we may not know the problems. I'm paraphrasing now. We may not know going to arise as a result of injuries, but the versatility that we have personnel wise and schematically will basically help offer to those problems that will arise. And I swear he was talking CJ. I've been big out there, and Sark has been kind of his buzzword all of the offseason of 2024. He's been talking about versatility. So he's saying now it's not just with the DBs that I kind of been fixated on. Entire roster he's focused on with this group, versatility with the players, but I think more importantly the scheme. And he talked about it. Do we need to be more 2 tailback sets in pony package? Do we need to be more 11 personnel, 12 personnel? He said, should we go dime packages? He brought up all these different personnel groupings offensively and defensively, and I was titillated because I'm thinking to myself, I think Texas needs more variety in their offense, more variety in their defense. I've been saying Johnny Manson's going to bring the variety on defense with his exotics. And I think Sark exploring more personnel groupings, the pony package, the 6-0 line package, Big 11, Big 12, the 10 personnel package, the red package from Alabama, 4 wide receivers, 0 tight ends. Also something with this deep wide receiving core you can explore. That probably was, to me, the most intriguing comment he made in that interview.
Yeah, I thought so, absolutely. And we've heard Sarkisian use finding ways to win with different strengths of the team in the past, whether that be the running game, the big play game, on the offensive side of the ball, getting pressured, forcing turnovers, finding ways in whatever way to win the game. Now it's going position by position in ways that they can exploit the opposition. I thought it was really interesting. You go back to last year even. I mean, they took 7.5 minutes off the clock against Alabama to seal that game in Tuscaloosa, a game in which he mentioned they've only lost one time at home in 18 years. They had never lost by double digits. And so that's really encouraging to me is that Sarkisian's looking at his offense specifically and saying, yeah, we've got 7 or 8 offensive linemen right now that could probably play and give us pretty good snaps at the moment. We like our 5. but we also have position versatility. I can move Hayden Conner to center. I can move him out to right tackle. I can bump Cole Hudson out from left guard to center to right guard. I know what I have there. Of course, you like your two tackles. You have Jake Majors in the center, but there's a lot of moving pieces that you have right now that have a lot of experience on the offensive line. Then if you on a week-to-week basis, you're never going to play the same two teams on a given season. Teams will change as the season continues on. Sarkisian's kind of suiting up and dressing up this offense right now to succeed against whatever defensive look that they face.
Great point.
They have two tight ends right now that they can trust. They have a full platter of running backs that they can look at and say, yeah, they can go get us 5 to 6 yards on a given carry. We can go 2 tailback sets because I know in the passing game they're also going to be threats, and they're going to give me a look in motion that will give defenses fits. And, of course, we've talked about 6 wide receivers right now that figure to be in the rotation going up into this season. So that's so many different options. They can go into the jumbo set. They can go 21. They can go 12. They can go empty and still find ways to be effective regardless of the personnel on the field. And that's absolutely the versatility that Sarkisian's talking about. And it's also where he talked about it as well. This program's come a long way. They did not have this luxury early on in his tenure at Texas. And now that he's finally got this room in year 4 looking like he wants it to be, now that playbook's wide open, especially when you have Quinn Ewers who's returning for year 3. There's nothing that will be off limits with this offense moving forward. And I think that's very encouraging for Texas fans across the country, especially going into a new conference in the SEC.
Yep. No, it's a great point, especially I like you said about the offensive line too. I didn't even think about it, but that may be one of the most versatile groups at Texas, considering all the cross training going on there. Another thing that Sark was asked about was the portal. I mean, it's obviously a big topic of conversation everywhere in Texas. It give it, then it take it away. And Texas has been on the receiving end. I would also deal with a lot of departures. I just want to get to one thing Sark said. I mean, he talked a lot about the portal, but he said that their philosophy toward the end of his interview. He said basically their philosophy is they want to make it as tough as possible for a player to have to leave. He said, we want to make it as hard as possible for players to want to leave. They're getting developed. They're getting a first-class education. They're playing in a great scheme, getting treated really well. He said they're being he said they're actually obviously great locker room culture he brought up there too. He said they're being coached up. He said the culture with the team is really good. He said, we want to make it as tough as possible, as hard as possible for guys to leave. And we want them to almost be emotional and to be painful when these guys have to leave. And it made me think of Malik Murphy, because it was painful for Malik. That he's like, I got to go. I don't want to go, but I got to go. I got to go. If I want to play, I got to go. He played at Texas, contributed, of course, helped Texas win some games. But if he wanted to be a starting quarterback, because you had a veteran returning, you got an Arch Manning now in the fold as well, he thought to himself, hey, I gotta go somewhere else to get a better opportunity. And Sark, by the way, said he wishes those guys well when that happens, when every opportunity has been exhausted and when you're making the list of pros and cons of, hey, should I stay or should I go, that really the only determining factor that the coaches cannot really control is the path to play, because that's on the young man. It's like, hey man, right. That's up to you whether how much you're going to play, but the education and making sure that you get the most NIL opportunities that you can, and the culture of the program and how well we treat you and the city of Austin. Well, they can't control the city of Austin, but you get my point. Like a lot of things they can control. He said, we'll control as much as we can, basically. But that's what they want to do. They want to make it hard for guys to want to leave.
And it should be. That should be the case. You're at the University of Texas. What's better than Texas right now, especially when it looks like they're going to be winning a lot of football games for the foreseeable future? Sark also mentioned using the city as a strength. It's the only city in the country for the most part that has over 1 million citizens, and it doesn't have a professional football team. That is the University of Texas. Doesn't have a professional sports team. Let me use it in the big three, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL. It is University of Texas. That is the sports team in the city. I know FC Austin is doing a good job, but by the end of the time, I mean, it's going to be Texas that gets all the eyeballs. But I liken Austin Jordan to that same group. It's a guy who the teammates loved. He was a big locker room guy. Didn't necessarily want to leave Texas, but hey, sometimes you have to look at what's best for yourself, similarly to Malik Murphy. And again, it's not a bad thing that there's a lot of depth and a lot of talent. And it's probably the one unfortunate side of things is you have a kid that you recruited that you spent a lot of time with, has been in your program for multiple years now, and they just don't see that path to the field, and it's best for them to depart and go see what else they can find, elsewhere. That's college football. I mean, I understand it. It's not easy, but hey, again, it's Sarkisian's job to make it very difficult to want to leave Texas. That has to be the one instance in which you look at it for Sarkisian and say, yeah, go find the field. Because unfortunately, we have some pretty good guys on the field here. And that's going to be, again, I think what we'll see for Texas moving forward is the roster is going to be, very healthy in terms of the departures out, because guys are going to want to stay here. There's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of resources. It is the flagship program of the state of Texas, and it's one of the best programs in the entire country when it is rolling. And right now, things are looking really good.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's just, it's really interesting. And I love that philosophy. It's simple to say, I'm going to just try to get hard for them to leave. That brings them to tears when they have to come in there and tell coach, I got to go, coach. I don't want to go, but I got to go. My heart's here, but I got to go. I got to go do what's best for me and my future prospects as a player. All right, last little comment here that I want to get your thoughts on. This is, and I'm not complaining here, by the way. I want to preface this conversation by saying I'm not complaining, because Texas right now, world problems. Everything we talk about is kind of first world problems for Texas. But he was asked about his biggest concern going into the 2024 season. What could derail Texas' hopes of being a national title contender? He brought up the interior D-line, which we all understand. He brought up interior D-line. And he brought up wide receiver. He said those are the two. And he brought up the wide receiver chemistry with Quinn, because you have so many new guys and you lost three receivers that were drafted into the NFL. And of course, he brought up the D-line. You had the best D-tackle duo in all of college football last season, and now you have uncertainty. Two things. First, it makes sense because look at the transfer portal acquisitions. 3 wide receivers, 3 D-tackles in the last 2 transfer portal acquisition cycles in the offseason. So whatever Sark was concerned about, he backed that up by his actions in the transfer portal. But the second thing, CJ, he is not worried about the secondary. He is not. After the spring game, remember, he only complained about one thing after the spring game. He said, I need more big humans in the interior D-line. He didn't say a damn thing about the secondary. And he complained. He even said that in the Washington game, the reason they lost was because they couldn't make enough big plays offensively in the passing game. And I'm thinking to myself, I think you lost because you couldn't defend the big plays in the passing game. But my point being, he's not concerned about that secondary. Not at all. He's had multiple opportunities to talk about it. He doesn't address it. Maybe he thinks it's bad mojo, but he's not talking about it. So that gives me optimism that the secondary is not a problem, Sark. I think maybe it's the Johnny Nansen influence. I have no idea why. But when he was asked about biggest concerns, interior D-line, which we all know, but then he said wide receiver, like the chemistry with Quinn, because they have so many new guys in there.
Yeah, to say this after spring football as well should be encouraging. We just saw Texas revamp the secondary after a year in which it was its Achilles heel. So behind the scenes, I'm sure that secondary is looking a little bit better than it did on the big stage in the spring game. And now things can obviously change. I mean, we'll have to see it again in the fall, but for all those folks in the comment section, going at Terry Joseph or Blake Gideon, that should be, hearing from the big man himself. Maybe tap the brakes a little bit. At the one time that we'll tap the brakes for Steve Sarkisian is saying that the secondary is going to be in bad shape, of course, because he's seen it firsthand. He's seen them make plays all spring. He knows Manny Muhammad's going to be a stud. We know what we have in Jahdae Barron. Andrew Makuba comes in as a 3-year starter at one of the best programs in the country. Yep. And we know that Derek Williams is a pretty darn good football player as well. Add Michael Taft, add in Javion Cole, and you're looking like a group with Gavin Holmes who could be a pretty good group in its entirety. Oh, and it's going to be helped out quite a bit by this edge rush that I expect to be very good for the Longhorns in 2024. So at the end of the day, yeah, I believe him when he says that it's not an issue. Because we've seen it in the 2 scrimmages leading up to the spring game. We saw glimpses of it in the spring game. And again, going off the spring game is malpractice solely for the understanding of what this group is. Because Who didn't play? Well, Jahdae Barron didn't play. Andrew Makuba didn't play a whole lot. Derek Williams didn't play a whole lot. Manny Muhammad played about a series and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, those are top end level starters for you that did not see the field and did not see the 350 yards that Arch threw for. 75 of those came on one play to a guy that's no longer in the program. So I would tap the brakes on that. And again, to his point, since that conversation after the press conference happened, he's gone out and he's added Bill Norton and he's added Jermaine Lele. So he's addressed the needs of having bodies, needing bodies in that room on the defensive line room. He's gone out and added 2 guys who played, who are going to be 6-year seniors and who have played a lot of snaps in their career. That room is improving as well. So right now there's depth everywhere for Texas on this defensive side of the ball. And of course, their big players are going to remain big players. Anthony Hill, David Benn in the middle of the field. It's their spot. So I like the secondary. I like the linebacker core. And I think this defensive line room is improving day by day by the bodies that they add.
Yep, no doubt. And maybe it's the edges. Maybe because he's been bragging about the edges, but he's been almost silent and saying nothing really at all about or criticizing the defensive back because maybe he knows going to get home. Johnny Nance is going to bring some exotic looks, some tricks with him from Arizona that can help the defense too. And like you said, adding Jahdae Barron to the mix and playing your frontline guys 65-70% of the time.
Yep.
That's going to help you better.
I think the staff is really excited for Colton Vasek. And I know that I've been beating the drum for him quite a bit. But listen, I talked to somebody the other day that was around practice and towards the back half, I would say the last 7 to 8 practices, they saw a completely different Colton Vasek than they had previously. And of course, this was a guy that's been banged up. He's had a shoulder, he's had a back, he's had a hand. He's not necessarily been 100% healthy since he's arrived, but he was healthy the back half of spring. And he was able to flip that switch a little bit. We saw in the spring game, multiple tackles for loss, multiple sacks. He wasn't going against the Calvin Bankses or the Cam Williams of the world at Texas, but I think that's a guy that's going to help contribute. And when you can go 5 deep off the edges, joining Ethan Burke, Barron Sorrell, Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, now Colton Vasek and Justice Finkley, who's a 6th, that's a really, really good group. You're not going to see drop-off on that group like you have in years past. You're going to have bodies in that group, and you're going to be flying at the quarterback at 100% every snap, whereas in years past, you probably have some snaps or some downs where you're going at about 70 or 80 just because you don't have the depth to come in 100% fresh. So I think that's going to unlock a pretty dangerous element to this defense whenever the season comes back rolling around.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it'll be when Texas gets up big in these games. Hopefully that still happens in the SEC. It happens with Sark teams. When you're up by 20, you force teams into predictable passing situations when they got to throw the football, abandon the run to try to come back, which U of H had to do and TCU had to do and K-State had to do. You can put out a NASCAR package out there, multiple edge rushers out there, get after the quarterback like nobody's business, and maybe that'll be a little bit different than what you did last year potentially. So I'm with you. I think those edges, man, they're going to be a problem. That's what Sark says, and that's what this is all about, what Sark is saying. Okay, thank you, CJ, for the time, man. Appreciate it as always. Great conversation. That's what these Saturday morning conversation is all about. Thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it. For the On Texas Football family, for CJ and for myself, until next time.